To begin with, my topic focuses on irregular employment in Japan, which can be considered as any work that is not regular or full-time and long-term. This can include temporary, contract work, part-time work, among many other alternatives. It makes up a significant percent of the workforce in Japan, and many irregular workers fall in the category of youth, and is represented in my research. I focused on the age group of 20 to 36 relatively to focus on. My major research questions included: how have irregular workers in Japan been impacted by COVID-19? What measures has the government as well as companies taken to support irregular workers? And how is the current state of treatment of irregular workers a reflection of ongoing societal and policy level disparities towards irregular employment? To answer these questions, I took a kind of two-sided approach in including quantitative and qualitative data, and also encompassing many disciplines in this paper. For my quantitative data, I focused on the employment status survey, as well as a survey put together by the Japanese Institute of Labor Policy and Training, titled Survey on the Impact That Spreading Novel Coronavirus Infection Has on Work and Daily Life. And then for my qualitative data, I focused on the 2019 and 2020 white papers by the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare, as well as ethnographic papers from the series titled Vulnerable Populations Under COVID-19 in Japan, A Lull in the Storm. Additionally, I included a YouTube channel titled Tada no Frita, which is a basically life documentary channel that a self-identifying freeder put together about his experiences during COVID-19 and as a freeder in general. Additionally, I explored additional sources and themes, including Japanese culture through Hofstede's intercultural dimensions, pop culture and media representations through popular television dramas and film, as well as topics of hyperaging society and ibasho, which are all relevant to the idea of irregular employment and youth employment. For one of my first major results was in regards to the overview of the state of irregular employment during COVID-19. And through this, I was able to find, especially through the JLPT results in the survey I mentioned before, that there were visible disparities between irregular and regular workers. And these were in the form of decreases in working hours as well as wages, and even a higher rate of contract job termination after COVID-19. And although these were also present for regular workers, it was much more present in irregular workers than regular workers. And it was also noted that specifically for freelancers, which is a booming irregular employment field right now, freelancers were especially hit hard, with a lot of their work being prioritized to regular workers instead of going back to the freelancers who would usually do this work. There were also occurrences of mistreatment, villainization, and dehumanization of irregular workers during the pandemic based on their type of occupation, and this was outlined in those ethnographic papers. And I also was able to get a sense of the feeling of being an outcast as an irregular worker, as well as the financial struggle during the pandemic that the individual in the Tada no Frita channel went through on his own. And then the second set of results that I found was specifically in regards to policymakers and employers. I found that there was a serious lack of urgency by the government as well as companies to assist irregular and young workers before and during the pandemic, specifically during the pandemic with the COVID relief that was going out to workers. Many irregular workers, including freelancers, were unable to access COVID-19 relief funds because they either were not affiliated with the company, or companies that they were affiliated with were not applying for the funds for their employees. Additionally, looking at the white papers from the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare, there was a widespread desire for Japanese companies to hire more regular workers, but many companies did not look towards young and irregular workers for trying to solve these issues, and instead were focused on the elderly population. Ultimately, I was able to come to the conclusion that there are significant disparities in COVID-19 responses for regular and irregular employees. And while this has occurred during COVID-19, this is not limited to during the pandemic, and this has been something that has been going on even since the beginnings of irregular employment in the 1990s. And while there's been recognition of Japan having a labor shortage, there doesn't seem to be a huge notion of needing to structurally change the workforce and working styles to be more suitable for younger and irregular workers.